Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Cava. Guys, we have a really special guest today. Dan Rowe joins us today. He's the founder and CEO at Fransmart. Dan specializes in finding the next big thing, and for over 20 years has identified and grown brands like Five Guys Burgers and Fries, QDOBA Mexican Grill, and the Halal Guys, from small unit businesses to the powerhouse chains that they are today. Under Dan Rowe's direction, Fransmart's current and past franchise development portfolio brands have opened more than 5,000 restaurants worldwide and facilitated franchise investments that have cumulatively generated over $1 billion in revenues to date. Dan is also the co-managing partner of Kitchen Fund and FranInvest, which have invested in Sweetgreen, Cava, by Chloe, Inday, and eegees. I hope I said that right, to name just a few. And he's also an active board member at YPO and the National Restaurant Association. Dan, wow, I finally got to snag you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what a list of accomplishments. My goodness. So congratulations to you. I'm sure that our audience would want to hear about how you grew up and how that influences what you do today.
Sure. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California. I was never a good student. I always wanted to be really successful, but I didn't really know how or what I was going to do. I barely got out of high school and I never went to college, but I had a father who had a similar background. He got out of high school, never went to college, became very successful as an entrepreneur in his own business. So I knew at a young age I was going to be self-employed, and I literally at 23 started my company.
That's great.
Wow. Isn't it? It's funny that how at your core you just knew who you're going to be. And one of the common denominators, by the way, to very successful entrepreneurs is they don't usually do well in school. It is a common theme. So then why franchising? How did you go from, I know I'm going to be successful, I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur, to then going into franchising?
So when I was 18 or 19, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, right? So I wasn't going to college, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it. I just know I want to be successful. And I'm looking through the paper one day and I see this ad for a Tony Robbins conference, and I went to it. And it was a 2-day seminar. And the whole point is, what do you want to do with your life? Like, how do you want to design a life that's, like when you look back 50, 80 years old, that you're pleased with. And so the end of my 2 days, I basically went through this huge project of saying all kinds of weird things that I thought other people wanted to hear. And I finally settled in on my passion is I want to get rich helping people get rich. Right. And so I knew at 18 that I wanted to get rich helping people get rich. I don't want to drive a Ferrari at the expense of you losing your house. I don't want, and so I want to be successful helping other people. So helping other people has also become a theme. Now I'm on my sort of second half of my career, but that's really it. Is I wanted to be self-employed, and I wanted to get rich helping people get rich, and I couldn't right at 18 I got lucky. I went to work in the software business, and I couldn't stand software, but I loved that I was working with this group that kept launching new software companies. And so I got at a young age, from 18 to sort of 23, I got around people that were growing companies, startups, like from nothing. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I liked about the software model is you sold software up front and then you got reoccurring revenue. So I liked that model, right? So at a young age, I realized I liked that model. When I was 23 years old, I basically bought a franchise. When I was 23, I bought a franchise. Me and a buddy of mine that I worked with, we bought a franchise of a bagel bakery, and it was based in Washington, D.C., and he and I were out in California. And so we originally were going to bring it all the way. It was only a 6-unit concept. And in hindsight, it wasn't very smart of us to pick that brand, but we took it. It was 6 locations. There was no support, no infrastructure. The numbers were pretty good, but it was sort of our ticket to be self-employed. And so we were going to buy originally the rights to Southern California. He and his wife wanted to move to Denver, Colorado. So I said, I don't care. I just want to be self-employed somewhere. And I'm tired of working for someone. And we opened up our first franchise in Denver. And I made a deal with these people. I said, hey, you're only in Washington, D.C. If I help make you successful out of Washington, D.C., we want the rights to do your franchising. And he said, fine, we've been trying to grow for 10 years out of DC. We can't figure it out. So we were successful in Colorado and then wound up helping that company grow from 6 stores to about 200 locations. Wow. And then the company sold. And I basically just got a broker fee. So we had a couple of our own locations, and then we got a broker fee every time we sold a deal. One of our shops was right across the street from the first Chipotle. So back when Chipotle only had 1 location, and we had a pretty successful bagel bakery. Their line was down the block. And I said, okay, when the company sold, I looked at Chipotle. I said, that's my next horse I'm going to ride. And we couldn't talk them into franchising, but somebody copied them in Denver with QDOBA. And so QDOBA had 1 location at the time in Denver. We paired up with QDOBA, and this time we had some skin in the game. So we not only got the broker, but skin in the game. And we grew QDOBA from 1 store to about 100, another few hundred in development, and we sold to Jack in the Box.
The Jack in the Box.
And then I just kept doing that. Like that sort of was my way. But it was a business that I like the economic model, because not only do you pay once, you get paid once, you also get this residual income that potentially could get bought out. So you're really getting 3. You're getting the upfront fee, the ongoing fee, and then potentially a liquidity event. And it's sort of like I've been doing this actually for 30 years. So I started Fransmart 20 years ago, but I was doing it 10 years before that, just not in the Fransmart name. But I'll tell you, when I was growing the bagel bakery, I was a 23-year-old kid. We were not that bright, and we were very, very successful with our shop. And we thought we could sell it to anybody. We're like, hey, we're not that bright. We're successful, so anybody could own this. That turned out to be a really tough lesson to learn, because not only did a lot of people not do well, but we got sued. Like, we got sued a couple of times, and we won the lawsuits. That's what happens if somebody's unsuccessful and they're feeling helpless, and they basically start swinging. And so we got pulled into a couple of the lawsuits where they alleged the franchisor and then named us to the suit. Fortunately, we won all those, but it didn't make me feel any better because it didn't align with my, I want to get rich helping people get rich. And it wasn't until I got to QDOBA that I said, I'm not doing this again. I'm not selling it to anyone. I'm going to basically, like with QDOBA, we're only selling this to people that are already successful franchisees of other brands. Like, we could go to, like, I think we sold to an Applebee's guy in Kansas. Well, we flew to Kansas, went and looked at his Applebee's. We sold to a Pizza Hut guy in Phoenix, where I live now. But we went to Phoenix and looked at his stores. And so, it was just different. It's sort of like, that's what drove me into franchising. But then quickly, right after Chesapeake, I got reconnected with this. I'm only doing this if I'm going to be successful, if the franchisees are going to be successful.
That's an incredibly noble, right? Of, having a passion to help other people succeed. The question that I have for you is that here you are, you have a bagel restaurant that's incredibly successful. And then across the street, there's maybe this one shop, but it can't be as simple as that, recognizing the next big thing. It can't be like, oh, their line is shorter than our line. So what is it that goes into recognizing the next big thing?
Well, we don't always get it right. And so we pick brands. Now, I don't look at a brand from where it is. I look at where I think I could take it. And so, like, I'm growing a company called Halal Guys. Well, it's a Middle Eastern chain. Well, they had carts when I met them. So there was no indication that it was already a successful brick and mortar. But my logic was, there's 2 billion Muslims. when you add up all the people that are Muslim or Indian, or really people that eat food over rice. If you've ever seen Halal Guys, it's basically rice with chicken and sauce. Well, that's Asian, that's Latin, like Mexican, it's Middle Eastern. 3/4 of the population eat that way every day. And I said, nobody's ever made a brand out of this. And these guys are calling it Halal Guys right after 9/11, which was not a really, like in New York City was not sort of, but when I got to know about these guys, and this became another sort of true north for me, is I want a brand with an authentic soul, a real soul. So like my difference with QDOBA and Chipotle, when he started, he was a chef, went to culinary school, and wanted to bring a really high caliber of food to QSR or to fast casual. It was all about food integrity, still is at Chipotle. Every time they advertise, you never hear about coupons or Groupons. You hear about ingredients and the integrity of the ingredients. QDOBA copied them. So in the end of the day, QDOBA knocked them off, and their path was always to do more or to offer more stuff or to coupon or to be lower priced or whatever. And you see 20 years later, Chipotle's worth billions and billions of dollars, and QDOBA is still hundreds of locations. And so, when I got to Halal Guys, it was the same thing. It's like I look for concepts that are authentic. They sort of march to their own beat. They do their own thing. They don't copy people. Sometimes they do it and it's not popular. So like a Halal Guys, right? So like a Halal Guys back, when I first took on Halal Guys, that's when, if you looked at CNN, you'd see people getting beheaded. And here I'm growing a Middle Eastern brand, right? But when I talk to them, they're like, hey, we're Muslim, we're in America, we're living the American dream, but we're still true to our roots. We're really passionate about what we believe in, and we want to share that gift with other people. And it's like, I just saw that as it's no surprise to me, Halal Guys is now the biggest Middle Eastern restaurant chain in the world. There's not one in the world that's bigger. It's already, and it's going to continue to fly. But that's one thing that we look at, is we look at authentic soul, real DNA, real sort of secret sauce, right? And so people could copy a brand, but at the end of the day, it also comes down to like, there's a DNA in the business itself, like the way that your employees live, the way your employees behave. And a lot, like your employees know, like, did this concept come from somewhere real, or was it a knockoff, right? And so I don't know, like I've just sort of maybe I took the long road getting there, but that's a thing that's very important to us right now, is we see a brand for where it can be 7-10 years down the road. It's got to have an authentic, real soul. I look at brands also, they have to be profitable. They have to, and not only to pay their bills, they have to be so profitable the franchisee wants to take his money and build more stores, right? Because there's all kinds of headlines in the franchise industry where some chain sells 10 units or 50 units or 100 units. 2-3 years later, there's none or one. And that franchisee built one and he's done. And so the whole trick is not to sell a franchise, it's to get that franchisee to build more. And they're only going to do that if they want to. So we look for, a whole bunch of things, but ROI is a huge thing. It's got to be early enough in the game too, where a franchisee could build a couple of locations, let those self-fund into more locations and sell it. And so like if you were trying to do that today in the frozen yogurt business, which is sort of, not the place to be, the multiple you're going to get on your frozen yogurt business is so-so. The multiple you get on a Five Guys or you see these Dave's Famous Chicken or whatever those things are called, like that's one of the hottest things in the industry right now. So his multiple will be much higher. So we look for concepts that when a franchisee can get to 7 or 10 units, that it's still at that point where people could, like a lot of demand, where people could still sell it for a lot of money.
Yeah. So it's got to have an authentic DNA. Equally important, if not more important, it needs to have a strong ROI, where when I first get in, I can then leverage that into a third and fourth and fifth and seventh location. Question, part of this authenticness that you're looking for, is innovation any part of that, or does innovation play in your decision-making process that says, I'm going to take this brand on, I'm going to grow this brand?
Certainly. Well, it goes both ways. Sometimes people are trying to be overly contrived with innovation, and they're an example of someone that spends $10 to make a dollar, right? And remember back in the dot-com craze, or whatever, but it's happening right now with the AI craze. So innovation where it actually matters, we're definitely interested in that. So we have concepts like there's a brand, Brooklyn Dumplings, based in New York City. And he opened during COVID, and he opened a contactless fast casual restaurant that you order on your phone or at a kiosk, and all the food comes in a like an auto locker, like an automat locker. And he did it because of COVID. And in hindsight, it's genius, because he has a restaurant that has one half the staff of another restaurant that does the same sales. So, but yeah, I mean, innovation's important. I also look at that as a trend line. So because we're getting to brands so early, if a brand is ahead of that curve when there's only a couple of units or only a couple of years old, what's it going to be in 5 years or in 10 years, right? Is the innovation an indication of that this brand's going to constantly innovate and stay ahead, like our Glow 30, the facial franchise.
Yeah.
They only have a couple locations, and they've already got this AI scanner that tracks your face. And it's like, that's genius. They're the only one doing it. And then you realize that the founders, it's a husband and wife team. They're both doctors. And the husband has this affinity for technology, and the way that he thinks about technology, everybody we bring out to see Glow 30, including huge restaurant franchisees, big franchisees, 50 plus locations, they're all like hanging on this guy's every word, because he's doing more with innovation and technology than their chains, which are billions of dollars in sales. And so I look at that as like, not only is he innovative, but it's like, God, what's it going to be like next year and the next year and the next year? He's constantly going to stay ahead. But and we see these things too with our fund. Like, we're constantly getting people sending us these, tech decks for raising money in the technology space. And it's like, half these people are just chasing a trend, and they're basically just doing it because it's the flavor of the day. But, you can just see it. It's like, they're not going to go anywhere.
Dan, it's interesting to hear you talk about technology the way you're talking about it, because I think that a lot of people are fascinated with technology, but they don't always know how to implement it in their own business or their own industry.
Yeah, I came to this industry from technology, and I've always got sort of I'm just always thinking about it. And the truth is, most technology is a lie. Most technology doesn't work the way that the brochure says it works. And most people who buy into technology wind up, it's sort of like point of sale systems. Like, most people buy these point of sale systems based on all of the features, and then basically use it as a cash register. Right. And so it's like they're buying all this functionality and then only using a small percentage. But, it's a funny thing, like that example of spending $10 to make a dollar. It's like, I see it every day. And, there's all these online companies and, online ordering, and there's, like Olo's amazing. And it's an amazing online ordering company, and it's expensive, and people don't unplug it because it's actually worth the money. But there's so many people chasing that, and they all, they got garbage. But most of these POS companies are just, most of the technology in this space winds up being what they call shelfware. You basically buy it, put it on the shelf, and never really use it, or you never use it to the full functionality.
So true. So you highlighted this Glow 30. You spent a lot of time in the restaurant space, and now you're diversifying more and more every single day. I'm making assumption that some of that is you're fascinating about the future and what's happening, but also this kind of underlining passion you have for profit, for making others rich while you get rich. So have you always been diversified, or is it just more and more recently? And what were your thought processes behind that?
Well, as a company, we've always been diversified across multiple brands, but it's always been in the restaurant space.
Mhm.
And I just have a passion for feeding people. There's just something very satisfying about actually making food, feeding people. Even like when I have people over at my house, like if we're having a gathering at my house, like I sweat the details of, is the house clean? Is the food great? Is the wine good? Like I care about feeding people, and I want people, and the fact that I can make a living doing that is unbelievable. But there's a lot of headwinds in food right now. I mean, tough to get labor, that went through a supply line issue, the costs are up, and people don't want to come to work and all that kind of stuff. And so in the restaurants, it's like I still love them, but I also, in the back of my mind, is like, is it profitable? Is it so profitable? I had someone today apply this morning. I woke up this morning, went downstairs and looked. He applied through our website. He says, "Oh, we have 3 certain concepts in this area. We've had them for 27 years." And he filled out the form, and it's like, they're not even profitable. Like, he's marginally profitable, and now he wants to franchise. So he wants you to actually pay him a franchise fee and pay him a royalty. And after the royalty, I mean, he's not profitable enough. And so we're just careful. Like, we only want food concepts that are very, very, very profitable, that have good ROI. So all of a sudden, beginning of COVID, the franchise attorney that I know sends me an item 19 for one of his clients. Item 19 is the way that you disclose profit. It's the only way you're allowed to talk about numbers in franchising. But he sends me the numbers for a concept called Pay More, electronics concept. And I think they spent $100,000 to open, and I think it made $400,000 profit, $500,000 profit, like after a franchisee pays a royalty and marketing. And so I flew up there to look at it. I took my wife and son. My wife's like, "Looks like a pawn shop." I'm like, "Yeah, I know," but they have an idea where they want it to look more like a Verizon Wireless. I said, "Okay." So I couldn't take my eye off those numbers. And then when I dug into it and I understood the numbers, it's like, this is a genius concept. This kid he's cracked a code of how to know what to pay you for electronics, knowing what he's going to resell it for. It's a buy, sell, trade, new and used electronics. So that quickly becomes the number one brand in our portfolio. And franchisees from food, we had a 25 unit Firehouse Subs franchisee opened up in DC, now he's buying more territory. But he gave us an interview the other day, and he said, "Knowing what I know about Paymore, I don't know why anyone would ever buy a food franchise." Right. And so I'm like, that's so powerful. So then all of a sudden we start looking around for other food concepts. And a real estate broker, amazing real estate broker in DC, says, "Hey, I noticed that you're doing non-food. Would you take a look at this facial franchise?" I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know anything about that. It seems like there's one in every strip center." She goes, "Okay." And I said, "Can you send me the numbers?" And they sent me the numbers, and they're even better than Paymore. And I'm like, God, what am I doing in food? Like, there's so much more money in these other businesses. So we start working with them, and all of a sudden, that's now the fastest growing brand I've ever worked on, is Glow 30. It's a facial franchise. Half the franchisees are doctors, half of them are just entrepreneurs. They've got to pair up with the doctor. That's its sort of barrier of entry from other skin care studios, is that it does injections and stuff like that. But it's a brilliant model. It's a membership-based sort of. What I like about that for franchisees is you make money while you sleep. You get people that sign up for memberships. And this Glow 30 has people that have been members for all 10 years that they've been in business. They have employees that have never left from all 10 years. And so she's another one. She's cracked the code on the next thing in the facial, sort of that facial franchise space. And she has a model that's so good that people are buying, and they're food franchisees, they're non-food franchisees. We have somebody with 60 fitness franchises. I don't want to say the name, but 60 fitness franchises that's looking for 2 states for this concept. And it's all based on the numbers. But I mean, there's something about that, right? At the end of the day, you might be passionate about whatever brand you buy. Hey, I love dogs, I'm going to buy a pet franchise. Hey, I love travel, I'm going to buy a travel franchise. If it's not really profitable, your passion goes away.
Yes.
And so the best gift I feel like I can give somebody is if they're passionate about a brand, I want them to get rich in the brand. I don't want them to get an ROI. I don't want them to break even. You get what you focus on, right? So if you focus on breaking even, you'll break even. If you focus on making a business so successful that the franchisee wants to take their cash, pay taxes, open another one, take the cash, pay tax, open another one. Like that's when you know that you've got something that's going to go crazy. But both of those 2 non-food brands, those will both, I think, get to 1,000+ units.
I'm excited just hearing about all this.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm just really excited. I just want to shift the tiniest bit. Talk to us about social impact. Do any of your concepts have that social, I don't know, that corporate social responsibility factor? How do you feel about corporate social responsibility?
I think it's important. One of the things that we try to look at is we try to look at aligning compensation, right? This is one of the things that caused the employment backlash in the restaurant business, is that people for the longest time have paid you what they need to pay you so that you didn't leave. Like they never pay you more, but they would pay you only what it took to keep you there.
Yeah.
And so we have this whole process now, the whole thing that we're talking to our franchisees about aligned compensation. It's like, look, if we figure out how to engineer your economics to need less employees, sort of like Brooklyn Dumplings or Rise. We have a biscuit donut franchise in the Carolinas. He's been doing this for years, where he automates the order process, puts everything in a locker. Well, he has half the labor of a normal fast. So think about normal people are 30% labor. His is under 20. And so what he can do is he can overpay, right? He can overpay and he can share. Glow overpays. She openly says, she goes, I overpay. I don't want people leaving. And we pay full benefits. We don't say, hey, we'll pay the minimum or we'll offer you some BS benefits. And they pay 401k, whether or not the employee pitches in. And so one of the things that I really believe in right now is like the people who are helping you get rich, right? I'm trying to get rich, helping other people get rich. If I'm helping you get rich, you're doing it on the backs of other people, right? And you can't marginalize those people. You have to figure out how to make their life better for being with you. And so that, I mean, to me, that's probably the biggest shift I see. A lot of it came from the labor issue. I'm on the board of the NRA, and it's just like especially during COVID, and it's gotten better, but it's still an issue, is labor. And it's just like but you have some brands like Cava and Chipotle that don't have the labor issues because they take care of their people. Or you go to Glow 30, she goes, I don't have labor issues. She goes, people don't leave. They actually bring other friends. And it's right, because you take care of them. So, I mean, to me, that's one thing. And it's not only something that one should do because it's good, it's actually profitable, right? If you have less turnover and if you're able to do more with less people, and it just helps. And if you just look at the numbers of Pay More and Glow, it's like both of those brands overpay for their staff, and they share and they do profit sharing and stuff like that. And it's just like, and yet they make so much profit.
That's amazing. And this topic of employee retention and social impact is really big now. But the point you made is taking care of our employees, making sure our business is indeed profitable so we can pay them what others cannot pay, to create that loyalty and to make sure they too are living rich lives, right? And providing for their family and loving their work is so important in a labor force that is more difficult today than any other time in history. Do you have any other recommendations, both to the food space as well as other space, to when looking at the bottom line? How do I make my business more profitable? You already pointed out, choose the right business to start with, right? We want to do that. But I'm in the business now. What can I do that can make me more profitable in terms of my thinking or behavior or actions that I take on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, there's four things to focus on. You need more customers coming more often, spending more money, right? Those are the three big ones. So more customers, more often, spending more money, and then reduce your overhead somewhere in your P&L. You can always find a point or two. So if you wind up, raising top line several points, that alone is going to create a bigger bottom line. But if you can take like the labor percentage, if you could do 30% more sales with the same staff, your labor percentage goes down, so your bottom line goes up, right? Your profit goes up. If your employees care about you enough where they care about the ingredients, or they care about, with food costs, so many people talk about what the food cost is, but they forget about waste and variance and theft and mistakes and, letting things spoil. Equipment, like equipment breaks down and wears out. Well, there's some people that have longer lives with their equipment. Like, they spent all this money to open up a restaurant. If you take care of the stuff, that lasts longer. That's only going to happen if your staff cares about it. So you basically get what you focus on. So if you focus on that with your employees about how do we run a tight ship, because we want to take little pieces out of each line item in the expense column and figure out how to just take a little bit out of each thing. Well, it adds up. And if you're doing that at the same time you're driving sales, but going back to like marketing, when people say, hey, I want to raise sales, well, that's too broad. I'm going to market. I'm going to do digital marketing. It's like, what are you talking about? Just save your money. You're going to waste it. And unless you're very, very focused on what you're trying to do. So your marketing should be getting brand new people coming in for the first time. Operations keeps them coming back more often, right? Like you're already deciding, where am I going to eat for lunch today, dinner today, lunch tomorrow? Where am I going to get coffee in the morning? So it's like you're already buying stuff, and you have to decide when you drive home today, you're going to pass 100 other options, but you only pick one or two. So like, how do you become? A lot of that is based on operations and the way that customers who try you feel. Do the customers want to come back? So repeat business is the most profitable customer. And then how do you get them to spend more money? So it's a funny story. Like when I was growing Five Guys, when we first started growing those guys, I asked the owners, I said, hey, what percentage of your customers actually buy fries and a Coke? Because the burger is expensive. The burger has a high food cost. French fries and a Coke, not, profitable. And, everyone does. And I said, okay, let's just go watch. And we sort of watched the cashier. And it turned out only about a third of people bought fries and a Coke. And only about half the people bought one or the other. And it's because they weren't being suggestively sold, right? So, you got to assume, especially a guy like me goes into Five Guys and I order a bacon cheeseburger, you should assume I'm going to want a fry and a Coke, right? So it's like, what size fries, what size Coke, or do you want? So, but it's not hard. You just have to be really deliberate about what you're trying to do. I'm trying to get more customers that have never been here coming back more often, spending more money. And I just want to take a little bit of a piece out of each of the key line items in the P&L. And then your P&L, you could double your margins just thinking that way.
It's a recipe. It's a recipe for profitability.
Yeah.
I love this. And you articulated it so beautifully. And having been in the franchise space 30 years myself, and my franchisors and franchise brokers have put thousands of people in business. This is a recipe everyone should be taught, because I think we become hyper vigilant as business owners on cutting costs, which usually shows up in not such good labor and other issues, rather than on the more part of the philosophy that you have, and this repeat business in particular, I absolutely love. So I want to shift gears just a little bit. When you look at the past, Dan, was there a moment, an individual, a book, a situation that happened in your life that was pivotal? You talked about the Tony Robbins event. Were there any other events that made you who you are, positive or negative?
Well, I think it all comes back to that Tony Robbins event I went to, because a lot of the lessons that I learned are when I veered off that. So I would take a brand for the money, or it's like I would sell a franchise just to sell a franchise, or I would sell somebody a franchise and I didn't give them good support, right? So then that doesn't go as successful. So, like even like as successful as I was with Five Guys, or successful as Five Guys that I was part of, I torture myself thinking how I could have done that better. Right. And so it's like there was a lot of time in that window where I wasn't focused on getting rich, helping other people get rich. I was thinking about getting rich. Right. I was thinking about getting all the nuts. And but I think there's a lot of lessons. I mean, almost every time that the road to success is one of these things that never goes straight up. And every time I've been in a dip, I look back and it's just like, what caused that? It's like, because I didn't focus on helping other people. Like I made it about me instead of about other people. And I think that's a big deal. I've been so lucky. I know so many ultra successful people. I get lots of good advice, lots of good feedback. Most of the time it's stuff I already knew that I needed to hear in a different context. But I think the biggest thing it was this thing that I learned when I was 18 years old. It's like, it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider that to be like the theme? If you look back through your life and you're looking at all the different situations, the positives, the negatives, the successes, the failures, what do you think the theme of that would be?
Yeah, that's my true north, is being successful, helping other people get successful. It's the only way franchising works. Like anyone who thinks franchising works the other way around, it is delusional, and they're gonna go through some rough days. But it's the only way franchising works is if your franchisees are successful. So successful that they want to open up more stores. The only way they're going to do that is if the concept works and they take care of their employees. And like they have to, it's sort of this whole thing that everything relies on each other. But for the longest time, most franchisors think it's about them, and it's not. It's about the franchisees.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, every time I've veered, every time I've gone through some dark days, I look back and it's like, always, I could have done it better or differently if I would have just focused on that as my prison.
Let's talk about the future.
Yeah.
Where is Fransmart going and your investment company? What do you see in the future? We can clearly see there's more diversification happening. There's a laser focused on profitability of our franchisees, and of course the franchisor. What is the future? What do you see down the road?
I see, half of my time now is spent doing things I don't get paid on, like board work or mentoring or advising. And it brings me as much or more joy than the things I make a lot of money on. So I'm going to keep doing that stuff. I get so much joy helping people. I don't need money. I don't need more money. Well, I don't mean that to come out wrong. But I don't need more money. But I want to do things that matter. I want to do things that matter. And so I've even taken I take my own advice. It's like getting rich, helping people get rich. Well, for the longest time, even I grew Five Guys. When we got bought out, we spread that money around. It wasn't just me. Right. And so now we've always done that. But right now we actually make people partners. Like the people who got bonused at Five Guys, they didn't know a month before they got that check that they were going to get that check. It was just something that so much money came in at one moment. You have this euphoria where you want to pass a little bit of it around. But now I feel like people, if they're going to work for me for 5 or 10 years, I want them to leave wealthy. Right. And so, you can't just rely on people to be good at the right time. And so even against my board's wishes and my attorney's wishes, we actually make everyone in our company partners. Like they all get a carry in everything that we do. So I think the future of Fransmart, you're going to see our portfolio double, but the people that are running these brands are actual stakeholders. So they actually get a carry. And so it's an entire trickle down. So me to my team, to the brands, to the franchisees, and the whole load. And I feel like that goes back to my advice about telling people about aligned compensations. Like how can I preach that when I don't do that with my own team? Mm-hmm. And so we did it, and it is uncomfortable because I look at some of these employment agreements. I'm like, ooh, that's going to be a big check. And I'm watching some of these brands grow like crazy. I'm like, that's going to be a big check. But it's like, you know what? That's going to be the happiest day when I write somebody a check like that. Like it just, there's, you know, but that's the future of us, is more partnerships, more aligned compensation. I want to make brands bigger, more successful, and I want it to be on the backs of other people. We actually have people bringing us brands. And so this is working so well. We work with broker networks, like all the, you know, all the broker networks you work with. And we even have some of the brokers in the broker networks are now reps for us.
Yep.
Right. It's like, I don't care. I'll share it. I don't, you know, and I'll have people say, oh, you don't have to give that much. It's like, if they can sell it, they can have it. Like, you know, it's theirs. So.
Love it. Tracy, before we do a wrap up, I want to make sure that folks have contact information for you, Dan, to learn more about you, to learn more about Fransmart, all the projects you are up to. How would they get hold of you?
Fransmart.com or dan@fransmart.com. Easy.
All right. Thank you for being here. I don't know if you noticed, I was writing the whole time, taking notes of everything you said. And then I'll be listening to this a dozen times. This is very powerful, Dan. So Tracy, over to you for a wrap up.
Yeah. Dan, I just have to say on behalf of myself, Rebecca, and all of our listeners, we appreciate you. Like I really, truly have a very full heart when I say this, that I appreciate who you are, your desire to help others grow, and the fact that you clearly see the world through an abundant lens. Like there's enough to go around and there's enough to share. And that's why you have the success that you do, because you see it as half full and you live life as though there's abundance. And I appreciate it. I appreciate all the insight you gave us today. And I can't wait to look at those brands, the Glow 30 and Pay More. I'm actually literally excited about those brands. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, keep an eye. Keep an eye.
Gonna explode, no doubt. Thanks again, Dan, for allowing us to steal an hour of your life. We really appreciate it. And those of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. We'll see you next week for another episode.